Meeting started at 5:42 p.m. on the 11th of February 2020. And adoption of the agenda, if you have, do you have a copy of the agenda by chance? Have you seen the agenda, Mr. Reagan?
I haven't got it yet.
Oh, okay, all right, well, you have to take our word for it then. Is there a motion, is there a motion to adopt the
It's on
agenda?
the website.
I so motion that we adopt the agenda.
Okay, it's been moved by, Director Washi. Can you second that?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of minutes of January 14th of this committee, and do you have a copy of the minutes? No.
No, the packet, the stapled packet is just my information for today.
Oh, okay.
You must not
All
have a
right,
copy of
then
the
we
minutes.
will then bypass that item on the agenda and go to item 4.0, discussion items and 2020 bond update.
I'm up.
You're up.
You're
All
up.
right.
Date.
All right. So I did pass out a staple packet, and I have a few extras here if you want to pass them out to those that couldn't be with us this evening. Just wanted to go over a few things with you guys. So I think most of us here were at Community Forum number 1 last Thursday. We had about 35 people in attendance, and we had some really good feedback. So some of the feedback that we had was we want to make sure that we reiterate very clearly and concisely that it is a no tax increase bond issue. That we would like to have some handouts for the March 5th meeting, which we confirmed last night will be held at Millennium. So that'll be on March 5th. We'll have some handouts showing the work from our 2016 bond issue, the work that we did here at Baptiste, at Ruskin, and around the district, so that we can use that as a way to convey the work that we have. Try to explain and be more clear about the difference between a bond versus a levy and what those things can be used for, and then also what performance contracting is and how that was used in the past and those kind of things. So one of the other things that we had on feedback was ways to get the word out a little bit better. So we talked about putting ads in the Jackson County the Jackson County Advocate, the Martin City Telegraph, through social media, just different avenues for the different demographics that we have throughout the district, just better ways to get that message out there. Last night, I was able to present to the South Kansas City Alliance at the South Patrol, and that went very well. There was a little over 100 people in attendance, so it was a big crowd last night. Dr. Cargile, she
Yeah.
introduced a few students from Ruskin High School, and they did a fantastic job presenting, so I know it's not easy to get up and talk in front of a bunch of people, especially when you're a high schooler. Similar presentation, but I did go through that list that I had just gone through last night in that presentation. I made sure that everyone knew that it was a no tax increase. We talked about the March 5th meeting. We did talk about the difference between bond levy and performance contracting. So I did try to take the feedback that we got from the first meeting and then give it in the second. So lots of good feedback. I had a lot of people come up to me and tell me that they were excited about it. They would like to hear a little bit more. And so we have extended our invitation to those individuals for our March 5th meeting. In the packet that you guys have, one of the comments or one of the questions from our last go round is what work was done and how did we get to that from 2015 to 2016 when we did that bond issue. So what I've given you here is documentation from July 13th of 2015. And you guys can go through this. What it is option F1, which is basically what we decided to move forward with on the bond issue. And you'll see that we've spent $17 million on the bond issue, $16 million.
Somebody's at my front door. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Fido.
We spent $16 million in performance contracting, and then it lays out kind of where that money is. So we spent about $4.5 million at the freshman center. We spent about we were going to spend about $7 million at the elementary schools, and some of that got reappropriated to Baptiste. So Baptiste came in a little bit more expensive than what you see here. So it changed a little bit after that July date. I think what's most important though is at the bottom of page 2 there, you'll see 2020 to 2023. So we've always told you guys that this is a true long-range plan. And back in 2015, we thought, well, way out in the future when we get to 2020, as we said today, we'll have about $10 million in funds, and here's what was on the list for us to accomplish. This is what we said back 5 years ago. So similar to this, we will produce something that is the same as we move forward. So here we set in 2020, we'll have a list of approximately $30 million worth of improvements that we will do for the bond issue. And we will produce a list similar to this for 2024, 2028, 2032 as we move forward. So it's just a way to convey that it is a true long-range plan. It does give us something to shoot for, a goal to have in the future as we move towards, you know, what the district can do next. I know that our bond counsel, Lorenzo, with Steeple, has been looking into, you know, what could possibly be in 2024. So back in 2015, he told us that we had, he predicted that we would have around $10 million in 2020. Well, here we sit with 30. Similarly, I believe he's predicting somewhere around 20 million, 2025 maybe, in 2024. So when you see this list come up for us, we'll work through a list that shows about $25 million worth of improvements that we as this body, as this group, think that we need to move towards in 2024. So that will give whoever is in our seats in 2024 a good starting place. It's documentation of, you know, this is what they were thinking back then and why. And then obviously those things will change most likely, but it's a roadmap to kind of follow.
And what we'll do too is take that facility assessment, work with our construction manager at risk to help us with that cost evaluation as well. Obviously Justin's experience with that, along with Universal's experience in construction and what cost of materials and labor has been over the last 4 or 5 years. We'll project that out,
Yep.
For everybody. That way they have we know things change, but at least gives us a pretty good idea of what that might look like material and labor wise, in that 2024 and beyond.
Right.
Obviously it gets a little fuzzy when you get past the 2024, but at least we're identifying projects. Maybe costs would vary,
Right.
but projects probably would be in line, so.
Yep, and I think the important piece is that someone may be in one of our meetings and their big thing would be XYZ project. As long as they see it on this list somewhere, they know that they have been heard and that their project is on some sort of timeline to get completed. So,
And along with that is if you've got capital projects that happen in between, so just because we do whatever we do in 2020, there's still gonna be capital projects that are gonna be accomplished along the way as well. And what we'll do is we'll try to identify those two that are smaller in scale, obviously, but what we can accomplish just as a district capital budget fund to accomplish that list in between as well. That way they can continue to see improvements capital-wise along the way. Even though 2024 sounds like a long ways away, we're still gonna accomplish these things along the way as well.
it'll be here before we know it.
Yep.
And then just the last few pages are just other options that we had explored, as kind of this committee and then also at the board level on presentations that we gave, of ways that we could have spent that $16 million we got. So we'll go through a similar exercise as we move forward. So this is kind of an idea of what we'll be going through in the coming months. So, any questions there? Is everybody okay with kind of that
I have
process?
a couple of questions
Yeah.
with regard to the meeting, the South Kansas City Alliance meeting. Were there any persons who seem to be anti?
No.
Anybody comes up, cause there's always one or two persons that
Yep.
that
And last
know
night-
that always shows up and
Yep, and last night there was not. I think everybody was in support. What actually helped us was about half of that room last night was from the Central School District. And we had just gone through this whole process with a large group of them, because they just passed their bond issue in April and I'm doing that work also. So there were a lot of familiar faces from that side. And you could tell that those groups were talking, and I think that really did help, because they had just gone through that process and they were able to converse together and talk through it amongst themselves on how that process works.
did anyone say after you went through the whole litany of projects that had you thought about this adding to the list or what?
No, there was none of that last night. I had one question about, how does a school district set a maximum amount that they can borrow? So I just gave a high level of, it's set by, the state and the debts that they currently have, and as they pay off those debts, it just creates capacity to borrow money, and you can always borrow up to a certain amount. And right now, and I told them last night, so you guys know, I've been conservative with the numbers that I say in public. So I'm telling them around that $15 to $20 million mark. I think we know fairly certainly that we can go up to 30, but I haven't committed to that yet with the assessed evaluations and some of the things that are going on. There was a big presentation about that last night in terms of the lawsuits that are going on with that. I didn't want to overcommit and say that we would go to 30 and then have to backtrack later. So right now I've been conservative with what I've said in public, and then I will probably go ahead and make that more accurate next time we speak.
No, these meetings are public, right?
These?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's fine. I wanted to be conservative until Lorenzo, and I think we finally got that back, that Lorenzo's
Yeah.
pretty confident in
Yeah.
that 30 number.
And we're gonna share this information with Lorenzo in March. I think he can't come to the February meeting, and I really want him to be here. I think it's important that Lorenzo kind of give all the backbone of all of this, before we make any kind of solid decision about a number. In his numbers that he provided Shelley and I, the debt capacity for the 2020, it really is 39 million that we could undertake. Obviously, we don't wanna do that because we wanna get into a situation where we're making consistent progress every 3 to 4 to 5 years, with a no tax increase of 20+ million. I think that's important for the district long-term health and wealth. And, so we really think 30 is probably a good number. But we're gonna wait, that's kind of the numbers he's ran for us now. We're gonna wait for him to get here, and we're gonna keep looking at these numbers to make sure we're comfortable with that. But we wanna kind of openly say that now. He's ran the numbers, we've seen them, Shelley and I have looked at them, we feel comfortable with them, especially with what we're saying. But when he gets here for the March board meeting, we wanna make sure he answers all questions. And then at that time, we can really solidify a number and a vote, and we'll have it for you at the March Finance Committee meeting too, so.
Mr. Reagan, you've heard the presentation, any questions?
Not so far. I'm just listening right now.
All right, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.
And the last thing I have on my list, so you guys know, I presented last time that we would start to gather data from staff and the community. So, Dan and Marissa and I will meet, I think we're meeting next Thursday at 8 AM.
Yep.
To go over what that looks like, how we get that message out to the community that there will be an online survey that comes out, and we would love their participation. And so, we'll start that process, next Thursday, and we'll have an update for you at the next meeting.
We should have done this earlier, but for the record, can we identify ourselves, since the public's not there, if we could,
Sure.
starting with, Casey.
Say who's all here.
See who else here?
Casey Klappmeyer, Associate Soup of HR.
Dan Week, the Executive Director of Operations.
Shelley Wiltsey, Director of Business and Finance.
Justin Durham, architect with Hollis and Miller.
Cecil Watry, Board
Al-
Director.
Al Brooks?
Yolanda Cargile.
Carla Johnson, Council.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, nothing else, and you can be excused to go to, what kind of
I have
game?
a question,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Brooks.
Yes, sir.
When he was talking about, one thing I did get is, a lot of people did not get a lot of advertising. I know we probably answered it. I don't know if we had, did things over the phone or anything, but I think a lot of people are just wondering if we can get it out more this time, since next time, I guess, is in March, correct?
March 5th at Santa Fe.
And that was the only feedback I received.
So, I mean, the goal is to share with all of the housing associations, send information to the principals to include in their newsletters, to parents and families, as well as weekly newsletters that they send out to staff to make sure they're aware, as well as posting on our social media sites. And then Marissa sends through Blackboard, and so they'll get an email and a text as well as a call.
And I believe Mr. Sharp is going to
Oh,
put
yeah.
something in the Martin City Telegraph.
Yeah.
His editor was there last night, and she gave me the thumbs up that she would put something in written
Yeah.
format, so in the paper.
In addition to the Martin Telegraph will have something in there, and Marissa has already reached out to the Advocate to see if they will post in the Community Advocate.
It would be good if these periodicals, and I know the Advocate doesn't want to be called a periodical, but if we could get them to editorialize and support for an editorial of it after their last hearing near the end, be good too. Yes. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Reagan?
That's what Vice President Ray, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
That's
You
it.
too.
Thank you. Okay.
The next item is the Shaping Our Future update, and you all should have a spreadsheet that looks like this. And basically, it's just a comparison of the cuts and the savings that we came up with when we were doing this last year, talking about the closing of some buildings, and then where we are actually today. So you'll see that we projected about 76 positions, and we came in at 96.24. A lot of that is because, like the paras, we didn't project anything out there, and we had almost 12 positions that were cut. So there's, the numbers, for the FTEs is a total savings of the $5,135,000, and that's based on actual salaries, and, or the projection was based on, percentages. So, in the down below, we're just, we were showing with the transportation cut, there's a travel cut, and that 6,610 is basically, we've added more to our travel line. It wasn't an actual add to the budget, it was just a transfer from another account into travel. The ombudsman stayed the same, Discovery Ed stayed the same, Pacific Education stayed the same, and then teaching supplies also went down from a projection of 300,000 to 222, but this was also a transfer from capital to supplies, so it wasn't actually an add to the budget, it was just a transfer and coding. So, and the key financial lease, of course, that went away, 263,000. So I'm showing a projected cut of the 6.3, and then we gave everyone a step and a 1.5% increase, which came out to the 1.2, showing that we were at a $5,079,000 savings compared to the 5.4 that we were saying, which is basically where we were from the 15% that we were saying, we're at 14.8 right now. So, and then I'll be presenting this as a slide in the financials to the full board. Just kinda wanna give everyone.
Were you able to hear that, Mr. Reagan?
I can barely hear her. I can't hear her. Simply not, I can't hear her.
This will be repeated, of course, at the regular meeting on the 20th, but maybe a little summary of what you just said.
Can you hear me now,
Can you hear?
Mr. Reagan?
I can hear her better now.
Okay. Basically, I've given a spreadsheet of a comparison from Shaping Our Future of what we said our projected savings were to where we are actually, at this time. So, and it's just in a spreadsheet form showing the number of staff we said we would cut compared to where we actually are, and then the dollar values that go along with it. So I'll be presenting that at the board meeting as part of my financial, slide, and I'll have a slide so everyone can see the numbers.
Okay, is that enough to let you know that at least where we're going with this? And a full explanation at the board meeting? Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with you. I didn't know you was directed toward me.
Yes.
But yes, I heard.
Okay.
And then that leads us into the financial update.
This is for information. We don't need to take any action on
No,
this.
it's just information, it'll be part of the financial update. So the financial update as of January 31st, the projected fund balance is sitting at a 14.806. Our cash balance is at a 19,751,000, and that's as of January 31st. And the district has received in 11,133,000 of the revenue for assessed value in January. And the total we received in when we started receiving the revenue for the 2019 assessed value is at 21,700,000 right now. So,
Were you able to hear that?
Yes, sir, I got it.
okay. And then we did, oh, I'm sorry. We made payment of our tax anticipation note, so the 3.5 million has been paid off, so that 19.7 million that we have does not include that number. Additional information, as of December 31st, the district still owed the 207,802 in surplus health insurance premiums. And I have not received the January 2020 invoice for health insurance as of today. So I usually get that by the board meeting, so I'll have those numbers then.
And normally, does that fluctuate?
And we've been in, where's the wood? We've been in the black for the past 3 or 4 months now, so hopefully that'll keep
Yeah.
going down, so.
Now, what does that mean?
Basically, the 207 is the premiums over what we pay as we pay the payroll. So, when the premiums have come in, we've actually paid enough to them through our premiums that we pay that we're in the black. So where before we were always in the red. So even though we were making our monthly payments of our health insurance, it wasn't enough to cover the charges. So the past 4 or 5 months, we've actually been able to cover those charges and put a little bit of deficit, or pay off some of that deficit as well.
But what causes the fluctuation? I mean, is it
It's
usage?
just- Yes, it's usage.
Usage,
Whatever
okay.
the premiums are based on self-funded plans,
Yeah,
so,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
And that's really all I have for the,
Anything? Yes, sir.
What, Mrs. Wilson, I was, right there, that's a concern, because I know we have been in the black for a while. What is it that is costing us not to catch up? I guess that should be my, that's my question. I know when we was in the finance, we was in the black, and we didn't make a payment at that time. But now, since we are making the payments, we just never have been able to catch up. Is that what you're saying?
well, we had scheduled payments to get us caught up, and so we made a payment in December. And then we've had like a $50,000, to the good. And so it's just kind of taken that number down, and we're getting ready to make another payment where we can actually pay off this 207,000, and we should be good. Plus the premiums that we're gonna pay for the month of February. But at this time, I'm kinda waiting to see what the numbers are gonna look like for January 31st.
So the black is not the negative.
No, I'm sorry. Red is in the negative, but
Like I said,
being in the black means we're to the good.
That's a good thing when she reports that we're in the black.
Okay.
That satisfy your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay. All right. That's the financial update. Agenda items to go to the full board would be each of these go to the full board. And let's see, what agenda would they all be on the consent or be on?
Well, we have to present the finance update, and included in her finance update will be the Shaping Our Future, so it'll be embedded in one, cause that's on the agenda for approval each month.
Okay.
And then Mr. Weekly and, Mr. Durham will present to the entire board, so they have an overview of where we are in terms of bond efforts.
So they wouldn't be on consent, they have discussion, kind of, it's regular
Yes, sir.
agenda, okay. Okay, the future meetings of facilities on the 13th of February at 5:30, and the regular board meetings on the 20th at 6:30. And policies committee on the 3rd of March at 5:30, education accountability, March 9th, 5, and finance committee is March 10th at 5:30. Any questions that you might have, Mr. Reagan, before we call for adjournment?
Nothing for me.
Okay,
And there'll be a notice that'll go out tomorrow. The notice for the facilities committee meeting is gonna change to a start time at 5 o'clock
Okay, on
on
Thursday,
Thursday,
this coming Thursday.
this coming Thursday.
Okay. Anything you have, Watcher?
No, sir.
Anything anybody else has for the good of the order?
No.
Nope.
If not, the meeting is adjourned at 6:07. Mr. Reagan, Mr. Watry, is that okay with the two of you? It's certainly okay with me.
It's all right with me.
I'm good with it.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. The meeting's adjourned.
Let's go down.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we need to have more meetings like this.
Amen.